Hey folks, Brendan here from Blue Light, and today I'd like to talk to you about Stop and Search. Now, whether you are a potential recruit or you are thinking about joining the police, you're studying a policing or criminology degree, or you're actually a serving police officer and part of part of the serving police officers cadre. It's not my group, it's their group, it's our group. Anyway, if you aren't part of the different groups, Facebook groups that represent potential recruits and serving officers, then there's a link below. You'll be able to access those groups. Almost 16,000 potential recruits in one Facebook group, and in the serving officers one, it's only 6 weeks old and it's got like 2,500 members now. And I screen everyone. They've got to persuade me they're a serving officer. So there, it's quite a safe place for people to talk and discuss issues. One of those issues I think worthy of discussion is stop and search. So this isn't necessarily going to directly help you in any recruitment process. It's not going to directly help you in any promotion board, but hopefully it's going to get you thinking a little bit about some current and topical issues for the police that aren't going to go away. You know, it's not going to go away. And the big issue I'd like to talk to you about is race and stop and search, particularly in respect of the Black community, and present some challenges to you, especially those of you who are serving, and especially those of you who are keen to get promoted, on the sort of things that maybe you can think about that are going to position you better as a candidate for promotion, or just positioning you better as a police officer. I'll let you decide. Anyway, so the background to this is I'm part of the Metropolitan Police's Deputy Commissioner, that's Stephen House. I'm part of the Deputy Commissioner's working group, which is looking at issues around, in particular, the Black community in London, but also other minority groups in respect of recruitment into the police, retention, progression, and in particular, the trust and confidence that people have in the police in the London area. And the focus is on the Black community. Whatever Black community means to you or means to anyone else, that's the phraseology I'm going to use. So please forgive me. I'm not going to talk about BAME. I'm going to talk about in particular people who are Black in London. There's a big confidence gap. I've got some figures here, but I'm not sure if they're in the public domain. So I'm going to use some of my notes that I made last night, but there's Chatham House rules around this working group. So some things, you know, names of individuals I'm not going to mention except for the police officers involved. It's chaired by a chief superintendent called Roy Smith, who's, I've got to say, really impressed with him. But the big issue that gets discussed at the moment is stop and search. I did challenge the Deputy Commissioner last night around recruitment. Some big challenging questions, but that's for a different video. I want to focus on the stop and search. So anyway, these are some of the thoughts that came out of the group, and they're not necessarily mine, but I thought I'd share them with you to get you thinking, So I'm actually on the wrong page. I'm on the last page of my notes. Let's go to, here we go. So the Deputy Commissioner started off the meeting by talking about how we need to, he talked about some of the background really, that if you're a Black man, you're 3 or 4 times more likely to be searched and stopped and searched than if you're white in London. And it's about 9 times that across the UK. So this isn't just a London issue, folks. But he also talked about the disproportionality in employment, education, health, housing, criminal justice, longer prison sentences. So it's not just a crime issue, this, for people who are from the Black community in London and elsewhere. And also talked about the majority of homicides in the London area the victims are young Black males. But only 15 to 16% of Londoners are Black. That's according to the census. Of course, the census was in 2011, and that could well have changed. And he openly said, which means that the Black community suffers. You know, he's very open about that. But stop and search does bring in about 400 weapons every month, and it's those weapons that are being used to kill young males who are predominantly Black males in the London area. So a lot of you will have read about this, and if you haven't read about this, please do research this, because I think if you want to be a police officer, you need to be well read around some of the current issues and have some thoughts on this. And if you're a serving police officer, you know, don't just go with the flow of, oh yeah, we just roll out stop and search, and what else do you want us to do? You know, you're going to complain about it. Well, what else should we do? You know, you complain if we do it, you complain if we don't. Those sort of thoughts, you know, honestly, they're not going to get you promoted. And honestly, they're not going to impress your supervision, your managers. Honestly, they're not going to be the sort of thoughts that are going to enable you to be a respected leader within the police. So, you know, let's have a think about what some of these challenges. Let's see the world through a different lens, maybe. You know, what would it be like if we saw Stop and Search through the lens of a young black male who's growing up in whichever urban area, metropolitan area, or even is just travelling on the M6 in Cumbria, or in some other area, which is North Yorkshire, where I live, which has got a very low proportion of black individuals compared to the overall population. So anyway, so Stephen, you know, the Deputy Commissioner, was talking about we want to leave people feeling unruffled and as happy as possible after Stop and Search. And he gets that it's upsetting for people, but there's an absolute drive to ensure that they're being conducted professionally and respectfully. So how do we do that? How do we do that, save lives, and still demonstrate that we're using that power properly? So these are difficult questions, and they're not new ones, you know. These have been knocking around forever. So Stephen Lawrence, Scarman report, you know, a lot has been said about Stop and Search, sus laws before Stop and Search. So there's some talk there. I'd like you to think about this, especially if you want to be a sergeant or you want to be an inspector. Think about doing more than just checking the Stop Search forms. In your force, you may actually do this, but are you looking at data? Can you get the data which would indicate which officers are conducting a high percentage of stop searches, and out of those, which ones are getting a high percentage of non-positive searches and results? And when we talk about positive outcome, let's think about, you know, in London, when we talk about targeted intelligence-led stop and searches. If we are looking for knives predominantly and weapons that are used to hurt, maim and kill other young people, then if we are predominantly carrying out stop and searches which are revealing cannabis, then is that necessarily evidence of intelligence-led policing? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just posing a question for you to mull over and think about. But then again, if you're out on patrol and you're walking past someone who stinks of cannabis, you're not just going to walk past them, because the law of this land tells us that this is unlawful and you've got a power to search them. You're not just going to walk past it and ignore it. So that creates a dilemma as well, because just because someone's got a high percentage of searches and a high percentage of non-positive searches for the things that you're actually looking for, doesn't mean to say that what they're doing is necessarily wrong, because it may be that they are being placed in an area where there's a high proportion of people who are openly smoking cannabis and using cannabis, and we all know how long the smell lingers, and that's a very particular smell. You know it straight away. If you're police for long enough, you know that smell. So this, you know, it's not quite as simple as just dip sampling and thinking about let's put on action plans those individuals who've got a high percentage of searches and a high percentage of those are non-positive searches, or not actually finding the things that we're looking for. So there's no right answers here, folks. I'm just posing a load of questions to you that came out of last night, and hopefully within the Chatham House rules. So there's another discussion about discretion. So within Stop Search, and especially targeted Stop Search in a particular area that's hopefully intelligence-led, not just hopefully, it should be intelligence-led. You know, that's what you should be doing. I'm sure that that's the aim behind Stop and Search, that it should be intelligence-led. What does intelligence-led mean, though? And when you've got high discretion, what cost does that come at? You know, is there a bigger cost than that high level of discretion that you may have? But then again, do you have a high level of discretion? Because what does the legislation say about Stop and Search? What does it say about reasonable grounds to suspect? And how much trust and confidence do the police lose from the community by an overzealous use of Stop and Search? But then again, that overzealous use of Stop and Search in some areas saves lives because it recovers weapons off the streets and off individuals. So something about far more targeted. But what does far more targeted mean? You know, whenever I hear phrases like that, I always think, yeah, but what do you mean by that? And how would you do that? So questions here that I don't have the answers for, but I just want to pose them to you to get you thinking, So another issue is if the police do more precise and more targeted stop and search, and there's less numbers of stops and searches, there will still be a high disproportionality of those individuals who are black, just because the areas that where most homicides are taking place, most murders are taking place, most knife attacks are taking place, are predominantly areas populated by the black community. There's no easy answers here, folks. You know, these some very frosty discussions occur in this working group. Some very tense discussions occur, and I'm delighted to be part of it. Where else are we at? Just looking at my notes now. Yeah, there's actually acceptance that it's not that officers are racist. Some are, you know, and we need to weed them out because there's no room in the police for racist individuals. But in any organisation, you will get racist individuals. And racist has a degree of, there's a degree of racism, isn't there? Where 1 is not very racist, but still racist, and 10 is extremely racist. Where are people on that continuum? At what point do you weed them out? Actually, I'd suggest at 1. But I'm sure people will disagree with me on that. So what have we got here? Yeah, some officers, they're not racist, they're just poor communicators. And I think I've seen that. You know, if you watch Twitter long enough, you'll see various clips. And I posted a clip as well. I posted a clip recently of a stop and search that was conducted, but there wasn't really much go wisely going on. And actually, I thought the grounds that the officer explained were really poor and non-existent. But it could well have been a lawful stop and search, but just not conducted very well because the officer just isn't very good at communicating. And there's some officers like that. We all know that and accept that. They're just not good communicators. They might be great at other things, or actually they might just not be very good at all, and they need developing and supporting and helping. But there's a problem here because I think culturally, this is something we talked about last night, culturally, and I agree with this, are the police good at calling out things that other colleagues do that are wrong? I'm not talking about a breach of the code of ethics. I'm not talking about misconduct. Because I know as soon as there's any discussion about that stop search you conducted, then everyone will get, people will get defensive and they'll start wanting their Fed rep there. Is this a complaint? No. Right, well, why am I here? Have we got a culture, and does a culture exist in your team if you're a serving police officer, where you are good at calling out things that aren't done well? Is it okay to give feedback about something that wasn't done well, that something was done, it's not against the law, wasn't unlawful, just wasn't done very well? And it's a point I made here that actually, just saying that, look, that didn't go as well as it could have done, and debriefing it. And some of you are going to say, oh, we don't have time for that. Right, well, at what cost? At what cost to the community does you not having time have in that lack of trust and confidence that's slowly getting worn away? And I know from my time as several years as neighbourhood inspector that I need that trust and confidence. The chizzes that we had, that we developed and passed on to the appropriate departments to handle, did not come from Mrs. Miggins curtain twitching at number 44 Acacia Avenue. They came from dealing with people who are at the edge of or involved in criminality, and by demonstrating respect and treating them like your neighbour in a way. And I need that, I'm talking about, I don't need it anymore because I'm not a neighbourhood inspector, but I needed that. I needed people in the community to have the confidence and the trust to be able to talk to my team and give us information, because that's how we took on organised crime. Which brings me to the point I made that actually, in my experience of conducting search warrants and operations, there's always a debrief at the end of it, or even during it, there's a debrief. A hot debrief, if you like, and it's conducted in a certain way. And if you aren't aware of how those hot debriefs are conducted, let me know, and I can, give you my thoughts on how those are conducted. And just my thoughts. I'm not saying I'm right, just saying here's some ideas from experience. But I've probably signed up about 450, 500 search warrants in my time. And certainly I like to go on a lot of them. Couldn't go on all of them, but I like to go on a lot of them. And the one thing I did insist on, and was accepted widely, is that we debrief everything that we do. And the conversations with some of the constables and the sergeants and myself would be very open about that bit didn't go well. that MOE tactic that we used didn't go well. Our approach initially to the people in the house didn't go well. Why didn't it go well? What can we do better next time? We had a hot debrief. And it's kind of accepted, isn't it? When you're running operations, or you're carrying out search warrants, or you're running a firearms operation, or a sporting event, a football match. Having hot debriefs during it and after it is perfectly acceptable. It's culturally okay. So what's stopping us making it culturally okay on your team on response, or in your traffic team, or wherever you are as a detective, whatever team you're in? Is it culturally acceptable to give each other feedback without people going, is that a complaint? All right, I'm not saying anything unless I've got my Fed rep. I'm not saying anything unless it's a proper complaint. Because some of these debriefs may actually come from people saying, I don't like the way you do it, but I don't want to make a complaint, but I just didn't like the way you did that. Or using more choice language. Or it may just come from your own observations. I think this is really important. I do personally, I think it's really important that we enable that culture of being able to give each other feedback and say that actually, I don't think what you did there was very good. Equally, this is the bit that was missing last night, when something is done that's awesome, have we got a culture where it's acceptable to say more than just good job that, but this is what I liked about it. What I really liked about the way you did this X, that search, the way you used your TAC comms with that individual, what I really liked about it. And actually, I've learned something from you. I know you might be thinking, oh, it's all right in the training world, but that doesn't exist in the real world. Well, listen, I've been in the real world. Most of my service in 3 forces, including an overseas force, was front line. So I know what it's like. I know where you work. I know the sort of pressures that you work under. Well, not quite. Things have probably changed, but look, it should be okay. That's one thing I learned as my career went on, is that actually you get really tight teams when you do this. So I think there's a definite link here. I've been thinking about the links between the concepts of organisational justice, which then leads to that procedural justice, which then leads to legitimacy. And that's something for another conversation, another video. But anyway, I'm giving you a sort of quick summing up of the conversation that took place last night. I find it fascinating. I hope you do too. And the questions are posed to you here. This isn't a sort of do this is how you answer an interview question, or this is how to prepare for a written exercise on your assessment centre for promotion. But I think when you think about these sort of questions and you think them through and try new things out in the workplace, this is how you're going to be able to develop the evidence that you need and the confidence that you need to be able to approach those different exercises. So I think there's a lot of value in this. But then again, that's just what I think. So I'd welcome any thoughts or comments. I'm not sure where I'm going to post this. I'm not sure if I'm going to post it wider than just the Facebook groups. I'll have a think about that. But post some comments. If you're watching this in one of the Facebook groups, especially for you, the serving officers, then feel free, add a comment or PM me. Just send me a private message and just tell me what you think about some of the things I've posed there for you. But stop and search, sum it up here. Stop and search, it's not going away. The use of it is disproportionate. If we accept that it's disproportionate, we then need to start thinking about the reasons why. And then a whole systems approach to that disproportionality that exists, not just in stop and search in the criminal justice system, but in health, education. I've got a lot of ideas about that, not just based on theory, but based on things I've done. So looking at things like the asset-based approach to problem solving and enabling communities, the police more as citizen enablers than public servants. All 4 other videos. If you want them, if you find this interesting, let me know if you find it, even if you just find this interesting, just let me know in the comments. So to sum up, really, I think the feeling that came from the community members, one of them was actually a local councillor who had parked his car near a police station for a meeting with the police that day, and he was sat in his car on a phone, and he got turned over. He got stopped and searched, and he just couldn't figure out why, because he just sat in his car. What colour was he? He was black. So, you know, there's some really contentious issues, and feelings and emotions get really high around this. But we've got to address it. We can't just leave it as the elephant in the room and not tackle it. But the big thing that came from community members is they are supportive. It's not even broadly supportive. They absolutely recognise the need for stop and search. But what they're requiring of the police is it's done in a more intelligence-led way. And like I said, that could be a very broad thing. What that means, intelligence-led, very broad thing. And it's not what's being done, it's how it's being done. It's the how. How people are communicating during the search, before the search, during the search, and after. And how the explanation of the search and why it's being done is being given. So there's something to think about there, especially in respect of that cultural feedback thing. Let me know what you think. And I'll report back whenever I can on this working group. I really am impressed with the leadership in the Met of picking this up again, but I think there might be some inroads this time. Let's wait and see. All right, folks, I shall catch up with you soon. Stay well, look after each other, and if you're a serving officer out there doing what you're doing at the moment, then sincerely, I love you for what you're doing. It's a kind of police love, if you like, because I think you're awesome. Honestly, I think you're absolutely awesome. And if you're looking to join the police, then kudos to you. One day, you're going to be awesome in that way. It is the best job in the world. Let's just remember that, folks. It is the best job in the world. No matter how hard it might seem, how difficult it seems, there's nothing like it, is there? There's nothing like it. I'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye for now.